Hi, you guys. This is your chapter 55 lecture on ecosystems. So, your must knows for this chapter are energy flows. So, we're going to be talking food chains and energy webs, the difference between GPP and NPP, and there's going to be some math involved there, and then your biogeochemical cycles. The focus for AP is carbon and nitrogen. So, you should know water cycle pretty well already from regular bio. And in the book, they even cover the phosphorus cycle as well. We're going to focus mostly on carbon and nitrogen. So an ecosystem, keep in mind what that word means. It's all of the living things, all of the biotic compounds or components, and then along together with the abiotic stuff, like the sun and the soil and the water availability, precipitation, climate, stuff like that. There's going to be two unique processes that we're going to chart and follow, and that is energy flow and matter flow, or chemical cycling. So the first thing to look at is this diagram that's provided. It's an overview of energy and nutrient dynamics, which means it's summarizing the cycles of matter and also the flow of energy at the same time. So I want you to take a look at it for a minute and really understand what's being shown in this diagram, what the red arrows mean and what the blue arrows mean. Okay, so what I'm really hoping you notice is that the blue arrows go in a circle. So that means that whatever is available in the ecosystem is from the ecosystem. It stays in there. That there is no input. Where does it begin? Where does it end? That's why we call it a cycle. Whereas, look at the red arrow, look at the energy flow. There is an entrance and an exit. We know where it begins, right? All of our energy enters living systems from the sun. And there are many, many places where energy leaves. And because energy is constantly leaving, we need a constant source. That's why we say that the ecosystem is an open system with regards to energy, but a closed system with regards to matter. Energy flow in the ecosystem, more specifically focusing on just energy, keeping in mind conservation of energy. It cannot conservation of energy in our solar system, right, is a thing, in our universe is a thing, but in an ecosystem cannot be recycled. So that's why we say it's an open system. You have to constantly supply more energy because it's lost so many places along the way. The autotrophs are the first ones to get it. These are your producers, your plants, photosynthetic things, where they can use the energy from the sun to make organic compounds and matter. And then the heterotrophs are going to move that energy through the rest of the food chain. Heterotrophs are hetero meaning different, or other, and troph referring to food. They have to eat other food. They have to eat different things in order to get their energy needs met. They start, when you look at food chains, they always start at the bottom. So whatever is eating the plants is called a primary or first heterotroph, a primary consumer. Secondary is then the thing that eats that thing. Notice these arrows again. So the blue ones are going to be our matter or nutrient cycling, and then you have the red ones showing you heat loss at every single step. So everything energy-wise starts with plants or the sun, an abiotic component. So again, the naming that we do, the herbivores are primary, carnivores that eat those herbivores are secondary, and then we have tertiary. It usually doesn't get much more than that. Not only is this heat lost along the way, but that is our energy too. So every single step you go up, all that energy keeps getting lost back to the environment as heat, and it's not usable by that organism. There's another group of heterotrophs that you're rarely going to see on a food chain, and that is your decomposers or detritivores, eating detritus or dead things. The main decomposers in our ecosystems are fungi and bacteria, or prokaryotes. They do a lot of the work for us. Luckily, there's so many of them. We are not swimming around in dead stuff. They do their work very, very well and very, very quickly. Now we're into our NPP and our GPP, primary production, which basically is just the amount of light that can be converted to chemical energy and is then usable. The GPP is a measure of the total primary production in an ecosystem, taking into account the loss from respiration, whereas the gross primary production is what you get. It's like a paycheck, right? It's like what you get to start with. It's all of your income. It's all of the energy available. And then your NPP takes into account respiration, which is going to be a loss of heat energy. It's the amount of energy that is actually used by the organism. And then all that energy is given off as heat and is not available to the next level. So it's your net, your take-home pay after the taxes are removed, the price for being a citizen. The price for being alive is respiration. That has to get removed. And then you're left with your net. The net is the amount that is actually available to consumers, just like your net pay is actually available to spend. So when you're calculating your budgets, do not base your spending on your gross income, but rather your net. It is what is actually available after you take into account loss. So net primary production is different in different ecosystems. So what I want you to do when you look at this chart, there it is notice which ecosystem is the largest percentage of our planet, like takes up the largest amount of space, but yet has the lowest productivity. So just take a minute to look at the graphs or these lovely diagrams. So we're looking for a large percent of our planet, of our Earth's surface, but yet a very low net primary production. Hopefully you noticed that it's the open ocean. It has a whole lot of space on our planet, but does not produce a lot. Now, if you were to take it by percentage, because it is so much space and takes up so much space, it actually is responsible for a lot of the Earth's productivity. But as far as its net production per its gram per meter squared every year, it's very, very low. It's just spread out over so much space. And then I want you to look at which ecosystems are very, very high productivity, but yet cover very little of Earth's surface. So look for those. Lots of productivity, meaning it's supplying a lot of energy. It's a very small amount of space. And hopefully the things that stood out to you were the tropical rainforest in that middle diagram, average net primary production. It's a very, very high bar. Same thing with swamp and marshland, and same thing with algae and coral reefs. So we always say the coral reefs are like the tropical rainforest of the ocean, and that's has to do with productivity. Again, they don't cover much Earth, but then when you look at C, diagram C, it still comprises 22% of Earth's primary production. So it's such an important ecosystem. Really, really needs to be preserved, not just because we like trees and it's very pretty, but because it literally is keeping our planet alive. It's important. So primary production is affected by two things, really: light availability, which means that the less deep that the ocean is, the more productivity, the more light will be available there. The deeper the ocean gets, then there's less light, which means that you're not going to get as much photosynthesis. Whereas nutrient availability, you're going to see nitrogen and phosphorus is very, very high in a marine environment, which is good. Also, in a tropical rainforest, there's lots and lots of nutrient cycling because of the temperature. So because it's so warm, the molecules are moving really, really fast. You also have a lot of moisture there, and you need water to drive respiration. So you're going to get a lot of energy from a system where it's warm and has a lot of water available. Eutrophic lake, there's a few vocab words there. A eutrophic waterway or eutrophic lake is going to be very, very nutrient dense, and lots of algae will grow there. As far as energy efficiency goes, we talked about the 10% efficiency rule. So production efficiency, again, only a fraction of energy is actually stored in food. Energy used in respiration is lost as heat. And keep in mind, energy flows through ecosystems. It is not a cycle. So here, look at this picture for a minute and notice that if the plant material is being eaten by this caterpillar, and if we assume it's a 200 joule energy measurement, look at the distribution. You have about 100 joules. Half of it is just not assimilated into the organism at all, and it is given off as waste. It's going to use about 33 joules for new growth. It actually converts it to molecules that it uses for growth, so it will be incorporated into its biomass and increase its weight. And then 67 joules would be given off as cellular respiration. Here's the 10% efficiency rule in a diagram. This is in a energy pyramid. If you assume that there's 10,000 joules of energy contained within our producer level, only 10% is then passed on to the next level. So you're down to 1,000, 100 to those secondary consumers, and only 10 joules available to those tertiary guys, which is why there's not that many. In an area where there's so many plants, there's only going to be a couple tertiary consumers. There's just not enough energy to support them at that level. You can also watch their activity level too. If you compare the activity level of a mouse to that of a hawk, the hawk is sitting around most of the time, whereas the mouse is constantly foraging to keep up its energy needs. Ecological pyramids, we use these to give us insight into food chains. There's a couple ways you can look at them. You can look at them with numbers and individual organisms, or you can look at them in terms of weight or biomass. So look at these two pyramids and see if you can tell what some of the differences are and why they have different shapes. Looking at the two pyramids, I think it's a little clearer to understand why most food webs only have 4 or 5 trophic levels. If you look at how small that section is at the top of the pyramid, it's very, very small. In an energy pyramid and in a pyramid of numbers and pyramid of biomass, that's all that there is left. Biomass is literally like the mass, the weight, the dry weight of these organisms. Now, a pyramid of numbers can sometimes look really weird. They can be inverted, especially if you're looking at just like a tree. Then the box at the bottom will be super small. So you just count a tree as one individual organism. But then if you start counting all the primary consumers in that tree, there's going to be a lot of them. There could be lots and lots of caterpillars feeding on the leaves of that tree, or lots and lots of ants living in there. So you're going to get some weird shaped boxes, and it can look a little upside down sometimes. But keep in mind that they show different things. They give different data. So that's going to be the end of part 1 in chapter 55. The next part will be all about energy cycling, matter cycling, energy cycling, not a thing. Matter cycling, like water cycle, carbon, and nitrogen cycle.